Remember a few years ago when the A220 started flying, and we were all really excited about the long and thin routes it would make possible? What I'm about to show you is a perfect example of one of those routes that never would have happened without this aircraft. Oh, and thanks to my pals over at Surfshark for sponsoring this video. So, yeah, a nonstop flight from San Diego to Montreal is something that I never thought that I would see. But you know me, I'll try anything at least once, and that's exactly why I'm so excited to be here this morning. I already know that the A220-300 is one of my favorite aircraft, and that Air Canada business class is really good, so what could possibly go wrong? Well, not to give too much away too soon, but milk, of all things, is going to delay this flight by about 30 minutes. Other than that, it was a mostly fantastic experience that I can't wait to share with you. One of the reasons why this was mostly a great experience is because Canada still requires every person entering the country to submit their info via the ArriveCAN app. At least they did when I took this flight. It's slightly annoying, but thanks to Surfshark, a completely worry-free process. So, excuse me for a moment while I fire up Surfshark, the only VPN I've been using since 2019, and attempt to prove to the Canadian government that I'm not a terrorist. Surfshark encrypts all of the data that my device transmits and receives, all by itself, without me having to do anything. Not only that, it prevents anyone from seeing my exact location. Everything I do, from internet searches to inputting data, is kept 100% private. The only people who are going to see the data I'm inputting into the ArriveCAN app today is the Canadian government. Yeah, they'll probably eventually sell that data to the highest bidder 10 years from now, but let's not think about that. I can even choose from a list of virtual locations that I want to switch to, which will allow me to access regional specific content on streaming apps such as Netflix and HBO Max. It's my favorite travel app, and I don't go anywhere without it. If you want to give this a shot for yourself, use the promo code SCOTT in conjunction with the link in the description below to get Surfshark for 83% off what they normally charge to new subscribers. They're also going to throw in an extra 3 months on top of that for free, just because they know you're going to love it. Which is something that I don't think anyone has ever said about the ArriveCAN app. Air Canada operates out of Terminal 2 West at the San Diego airport, but you'd already know that if you've seen any of my recent videos. You'd also know that Air Canada has a really hard time getting out of this airport on schedule. Boarding is set to begin in 20 minutes, and, well, they don't seem to be in a rush this morning. Oh well, if you fly Air Canada out of San Diego often enough, it's just something you learn to expect. I am a reasonable person, though, and I am willing to cut them some slack based on what I know about their business class product. Reasonable to a point, that is. T-minus 10 minutes to the start of the boarding process, and, well, come on already. It's worth mentioning that I was really needing this flight to be on time-ish today, as I was connecting to an international flight out of Montreal that would have been a real bummer to miss. But, like I said, Air Canada's on-time performance out of San Diego hasn't been very good recently, so just being able to board the aircraft in the general ballpark of the scheduled departure time felt like a small victory. I wasn't freaking out yet. That'll come in about 15 minutes when they realized that they forgot the milk. Here's the thing about Air Canada A220-300 business class. It's the exact same product you'll find on other Air Canada aircraft, but in a more condensed configuration. More specifically, the cabin width of the A220 is 10 feet 9 inches. The 737 is nearly a foot wider at 11 foot 6 inches, but Air Canada uses the exact same business class seat for both aircraft. The difference is in the space between the seats. And I can tell you from experience that fancy little perks such as retractable footrests don't make me feel any better about rubbing elbows with complete strangers. It's cozy. It is nice, though. You've heard me say many good things about these business class seats before, and all of it is still very much valid here on the A220. My favorite part is the video screens, more specifically all the content that's on tap, and I've got to say that the physical buttons, which aren't on the 737s, are a nice touch. Clever pun intended. Also part of the package are highly adjustable headrests and bottled water that I assume is from the Canadian North. At least I hope it is. Speaking of beverages, the captain just made an announcement that the catering crew forgot the milk, and there was no way in hell that he was flying all the way to Montreal without milk in his coffee. Thus begins another Air Canada delay out of San Diego. Well, that was entertaining. From what I overheard, the captain himself went back into the main terminal and bought up all the milk that he could from various vendors. At least he brought back enough for everyone. So, yeah, we're about 30 minutes late pushing off the gate, and thankfully, so far, my connection in Montreal still looks good. Of course, you would have already known that if you watched my Air Canada 777-300ER business class review from Montreal to Paris. But Scott, you say, how much did you pay for this flight? Well, that's a very good question. This was actually part of an Aeroplan award redemption from San Diego all the way to Paris. That said, I have noticed that this is a very expensive flight to pay for out of pocket. Which does make a lot of sense considering that this is the only nonstop between San Diego and Montreal at the moment, and they can basically charge whatever they want for it. More people will pay for the convenience than not, in my opinion, and I kind of think that's what Air Canada is betting on as well. Time will tell if it was smart to launch this route, but based on the nearly 100% load factor on this flight today, they might be onto something, with or without the milk. Flying time all the way across the continent to Montreal today is going to be a very quick 4 hours and 45 minutes, which is actually kind of impressive considering that we'll be covering a distance of 2,460 miles. That's a lot of ground to cover in such a short amount of time. Put into more simplistic terms, I'll be lucky to watch 2 full movies if I don't make a decision like right now. Of course, recording myself flipping through all the options in an effort to get content for this review is eating up valuable time, and, well, that's the sacrifice I make for being an airline reviewer, I guess. And, as you can see, we had to make do with cheap earbuds, since they don't provide proper noise-canceling headphones on these flights. For anyone who has flown Air Canada business class recently, this should look awfully familiar to you. Breakfast on today's flight included a modest bowl of fruit, a croissant, of course, and a disgusting-looking but very delicious plate of eggs, sausage, and potatoes. This is actually a meal that I've had before on other recent Air Canada business class flights, and I promise you, it's a lot better than it looks. Does anyone know what that creamy stuff is next to the omelet? It's good, but still very much a mystery to me. Actually, maybe I don't want to know. Ignorance is bliss, they say, and I am a believer. Anyway, despite how much everyone was freaking out about the lack of milk before departure, I gotta say that this was another excellent Air Canada business class meal. Was it perfect? No. Was it good enough to feel absolutely no shame at all defending it despite how disgusting it looked? Absolutely. Admit it. You're still thinking about that sausage, aren't you? Personally, I'm over it, which was an easy thing to do thanks to how comfortable this seat is. Seat recline is just as good as the legroom, which is excellent for these longer flights, but these new USB ports are a little tight still. And speaking of tight, the Lou review was a bit of a challenge today. At least they had fun with the wallpaper. Since I don't have anything major to complain about so far, I'm gonna get really nitpicky with my next observation. Basically, the legroom is so good in these seats that anyone over 6 feet tall is gonna have to stretch out a bit to interact with the video screen. Look, it was either that or trying to come up with something clever to say about this bag of roasted almonds. There's just really nothing to criticize about this experience. Other than my lack of coordination, I mean. I think my biggest takeaway from everything so far is about the aircraft itself, and not the seat.
Flight attendants, 30 minutes to landing.
Yeah, it's really hard to go wrong with Air Canada business class on flights of any length, and this was every bit as good as I was expecting it was going to be. But the star of the show, at least for this video, is the A220. Non-stop service between San Diego and Montreal is exactly the kind of route this airplane was built for. It's long, thin, kind of like the meal they served earlier, and there seems to be enough demand between these two city pairs to justify giving it a shot. The 737 is too large, and a regional jet such as the CRJ-900 obviously doesn't have the range, especially westbound, since it's been clocking in at about 6.5 hours going into strong headwinds consistently. So yeah, there's really no telling how long this route is going to last, but I think it stands a chance thanks to the capabilities of the A220. Welcome to Montreal, by the way, an airport that I've never flown into or out of during daylight hours. Since there's not much to see, again, this is the perfect opportunity to call attention to the amazing SANspotter patrons, the people who graciously support this channel and my efforts to bring you useful and entertaining airline content. And finally, for those of you who are sick of all my recent Air Canada footage, you'll be happy to know that I am too, and this is the last you'll see of it for a while. On to bigger and better things. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.